True love feels confusing for avoidants, not because they lack depth or desire, but because it activates the very place where their nervous system learned to survive. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, love was never modeled as something safe, consistent, or emotionally spacious. It was something to manage, minimize, or endure quietly. So when real love appears, calm, patient, emotionally available, it doesn't feel familiar. It feels disorienting. Avoidants are often most comfortable in emotional intensity that requires nothing from them. Chaos, distance, or unavailable partners feel predictable. True love, on the other hand, invites presence. It asks for emotional honesty, mutual dependence, and staying connected when feelings rise. That invitation alone can trigger confusion. Their mind may recognize safety, but their body reacts as if a boundary is being crossed. This creates an inner contradiction. I feel calm with this person, so why do I feel the urge to pull away? For avoidance, love has historically meant loss of autonomy. Early experiences taught them that closeness leads to overwhelm, disappointment, or emotional invasion. As a result, they learn to regulate themselves alone. When true love shows up offering consistency instead of pressure, it quietly challenges this belief system. The nervous system doesn't interpret this as romance. It interprets it as unfamiliar territory. And unfamiliar often feels unsafe, even when it's healthy. Another reason true love feels confusing is because it doesn't demand performance. Avoidants are skilled at being functional in relationships, showing up through actions, logic, or reliability. But true love asks for emotional participation, not perfection. It doesn't reward withdrawal or self-sufficiency. It invites vulnerability. This can feel exposing, without drama to hide behind. Avoidants are left alone with their feelings, something they were never taught how to navigate with another person. There is also grief embedded in this confusion. When avoidants experience real love, they often sense what they missed earlier in life: emotional attunement, safety, being seen without effort. That realization can awaken sadness, resistance, or self-doubt. Why does this feel good and terrifying at the same time? Because true love doesn't just offer connection, it gently dismantles old survival strategies. In the end, true love confuses avoidants because it doesn't threaten them, it reveals them. It asks them to stay present without armor, to trust without control, and to believe that closeness doesn't mean losing themselves. And that shift, while deeply healing, can feel like standing on emotional ground they've never learned how to walk on before. When an avoidant's emotional walls begin to lower, it doesn't happen with dramatic confessions or sudden vulnerability. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, in ways that are easy to miss if you're not paying attention. For avoidants, emotional walls were never about shutting others out. They were about staying safe. Those walls were built over time, reinforced by experiences where closeness felt overwhelming or unreliable. So when they begin to soften, it's not a decision made lightly. It's a profound internal shift. At first, the change shows up in presence, not words. An avoidant may start staying emotionally engaged during moments they once escaped. They don't disappear as quickly when conversations deepen. They listen a little longer. They pause instead of deflecting. These moments may seem small, but for someone whose instinct has always been to withdraw, they are acts of courage. It means their nervous system is beginning to register connection as tolerable, even comforting. What's most striking is that the wall doesn't fall, it becomes permeable. The avoidant doesn't suddenly share their deepest fears or childhood wounds. Instead, they allow glimpses, a passing comment about their inner world, a subtle admission of stress or doubt, a moment of emotional honesty that isn't followed by shutdown. This gradual opening is intentional. It allows them to test safety without feeling exposed. True love creates an environment where nothing is demanded, and that absence of pressure makes room for trust to grow organically. Lowering emotional walls also changes how avoidants respond to closeness. Where affection once triggered tension, it now brings a sense of grounding. They may still feel the impulse to pull back, but it's no longer automatic. There is a new pause, a space where choice replaces reflex. In that space, they begin to realize that intimacy doesn't erase their independence. It can coexist with it. Perhaps the most persuasive sign of this quiet shift is consistency. An avoidant lowering their walls doesn't open once and disappear. They show up again. They maintain contact. They don't retreat after moments of closeness. This consistency signals something powerful. They no longer feel the need to protect themselves from connection. The relationship isn't perceived as a threat. It's becoming a refuge. This change is subtle because it's rooted in safety, not excitement. There's no emotional high, no intensity masking fear. Instead, there's steadiness, calm, a sense of being able to breathe around another person. When emotional walls lower quietly, it's because the avoidant isn't forcing openness, they're allowing it. And that quiet allowance is often the truest sign that love has reached a place they never thought could feel safe. For avoidants, there is a crucial difference between sharing information and sharing themselves. Facts are safe. Facts don't require emotional exposure. Facts allow connection without vulnerability. That's why, for a long time, avoidants can appear open, talking about work, routines, plans, or opinions, while still remaining emotionally distant. But when true love begins to feel safe, something shifts. They start sharing thoughts, not just facts. This change is subtle, but deeply meaningful. Thoughts carry inner movement. They reveal uncertainty, interpretation, and emotion. When an avoidant begins to voice what they're thinking, rather than simply what happened, it signals trust at a nervous system level. Instead of reporting events, they start narrating their internal experience. A sentence like, "I keep thinking about what you said," or "I'm not sure why this bothered me, but it did," may sound ordinary. Yet for an avoidant, it represents a significant step toward emotional presence. Sharing thoughts also means allowing imperfection. Facts can be polished and controlled. Thoughts are often messy, unfinished, and vulnerable. When an avoidant shares them, they are risking misunderstanding or emotional exposure. This is not done impulsively. It happens because the relationship has proven itself steady. There is an emerging belief that their inner world won't be dismissed, corrected, or used against them. Another important shift is timing. Avoidants usually process emotions privately and later, if at all. When they begin sharing thoughts in real time while something is unfolding, it shows growing comfort with emotional proximity. They are no longer retreating to make sense of feelings alone. They are letting someone sit beside them in the process. This change doesn't come with dramatic declarations. It comes with quieter sentences, longer pauses, and more reflective communication. And that's what makes it persuasive. It's not performative vulnerability. It's genuine. When an avoidant starts sharing thoughts instead of facts, they're not just communicating, they're inviting connection. They are saying without saying it directly, "You're safe enough to know what's happening inside me." One of the clearest yet quietest shifts in an avoidant experiencing true love is this. They stop disappearing when emotions rise. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, emotional intensity has long been a signal to retreat. Disappearing wasn't about punishment or indifference. It was self-regulation. Stepping away was how they regained control when closeness felt overwhelming. So when that pattern begins to soften, it reveals a profound internal change. At first, the difference isn't dramatic. The avoidant may still feel the familiar urge to withdraw, but instead of vanishing, they stay partially present. They may go quiet without cutting off. They may ask for space without shutting the door completely. This is not avoidance disappearing overnight. It's avoidance evolving. The nervous system is learning that emotions can be experienced without escape. What makes this change persuasive is effort. Staying during emotional moments costs an avoidant something. It requires tolerating discomfort without reaching for distance as a shield. When they remain present, even imperfectly, it means the relationship has begun to feel safer than solitude. They are no longer choosing disappearance as the only path back to equilibrium. Another powerful sign is repair. When avoidants stop disappearing, they also start returning more quickly if they do step away. Instead of long silences filled with uncertainty, there is follow-up, a message, an acknowledgement, a willingness to re-enter the emotional space they once avoided. This signals growing trust, not just in the partner, but in their own capacity to handle closeness. Less disappearing also changes the emotional rhythm of the relationship. Conflict doesn't feel endless. Misunderstandings don't stretch into emotional exile. There is a new continuity, a sense that connection can bend without breaking. For avoidance, this is revolutionary. It means emotions are no longer threats, they are experiences that can be survived together. When an avoidant stays present during emotional moments, they are doing more than showing up. They are rewriting a lifelong pattern. They are choosing connection over protection, presence over escape. And in that choice, quietly repeated over time, true love begins to take root, not through intensity, but through endurance. One of the most profound signs that an avoidant has begun to experience true love is when comfort starts to replace emotional tension. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, relationships often feel like a tightrope walk. Even small emotional exchanges can trigger unease, anxiety, or the instinct to withdraw. Emotional closeness used to bring tension, not peace. But when love is genuinely safe, that pattern slowly shifts. This transformation is subtle yet powerful. Where there was once friction, defensiveness, or constant monitoring of feelings, there emerges a sense of ease. Conversations that once felt loaded or heavy now flow with a quieter energy. Small gestures, a touch, a shared laugh, a lingering glance, no longer carry the weight of unpredictability. Instead of constantly scanning for emotional triggers, the avoidant begins to simply be present, allowing themselves to rest in connection. Comfort doesn't mean the absence of emotion. It means that emotions no longer feel like threats. An avoidant learning to stay emotionally close begins to recognize that intimacy doesn't have to be painful. Emotional tension, the push-pull dynamic of distance and closeness, gradually softens. Arguments are no longer battles to regain independence, and affectionate moments are no longer tests of control. Another key aspect is internal relief. The avoidance nervous system, which once braced for stress whenever feelings surfaced, starts to relax. The same moments that would have triggered fear, withdrawal, or self-protection now provide a quiet reassurance. Connection is safe, love is consistent, and they can exist fully without armor. This shift transforms not just the relationship but the avoidant's inner world. When comfort replaces emotional tension, it signals trust, safety, and genuine emotional availability. The avoidant is no longer just enduring closeness, they are welcoming it, experiencing it as a source of calm rather than anxiety. In these quiet, steady moments, true love is not just recognized, it is fully felt. One of the most profound shifts in an avoidant experiencing true love is when love stops feeling like a threat. For years, love may have triggered instinctive fear, tension, or the urge to withdraw. Emotional closeness, vulnerability, or even affection could feel like danger, something that might overwhelm, control, or confine. Avoidants learned early that intimacy often comes with risk, so they built walls and strategies to protect themselves. When love stops feeling threatening, it signals a deep transformative change. This change begins subtly. Small gestures, a steady presence, gentle reassurance, or consistent attention start to feel safe rather than suffocating. What once caused anxiety now brings curiosity instead of fear. The avoidant starts noticing that closeness doesn't demand losing themselves, that sharing their inner world doesn't invite rejection, and that emotional availability doesn't mean entrapment. Another key aspect is the shift in perception. Avoidants often interpret love through a lens of survival. Will this closeness hurt me? When true love enters their life, they gradually learn to reinterpret those signals. Affection becomes a choice, not a trap. Words of care are heard as care, not as obligations or manipulations. Emotional transparency transforms from a potential threat into a bridge for connection. This shift also shows in behavior. The avoidant no longer instinctively pulls away during emotional exchanges. They stay present, respond to needs, and allow vulnerability in themselves and their partner. The tension that once accompanied intimacy dissolves into calm, steadiness, and trust. When love stops feeling threatening, it is more than just comfort, it is freedom. The avoidant can finally engage fully, not as a defensive strategy, but as an open-hearted participant. They begin to experience love as it was meant to be, safe, enriching, and mutually nurturing. This moment marks a turning point, where avoidance gives way to presence, and fear gives way to connection. It is the quiet, transformative signal that love has truly arrived. The subtle shifts in an avoidant, when they encounter true love, are not random. They are profound indicators that this time, love is real and lasting. Avoidants are experts at self-protection, and for years, their patterns of withdrawal, emotional distance, and guardedness have kept relationships at arm's length. When you start noticing real change, walls lowering, thoughts being shared, presence during emotional moments, comfort replacing tension, and love no longer feeling like a threat, it signals more than fleeting interest. It signals transformation. These changes matter because they come from internal safety, not external pressure. Avoidants don't change for appearances, social expectation, or to please others. They only soften when their nervous system finally feels secure enough to allow intimacy without fear. This means that the connection they are forming is being perceived, internally, as safe, dependable, and worthy of investment. When emotional walls lower quietly, it's a choice to stay vulnerable. When thoughts are shared instead of just facts, it's a willingness to risk being seen. Each of these actions is evidence that avoidance is no longer ruling their heart. Consistency reinforces reality. Avoidance can be unpredictable, but when these behaviors are repeated over time, it shows that change is sustainable. This isn't a temporary thaw, it's a new pattern emerging. Emotional presence during tension, comfort replacing friction, and trust replacing fear all indicate that the avoidant has learned a new way to relate, a way grounded in safety rather than survival. Finally, these changes signal genuine connection. Love is real when it transforms habitual fear into willingness, isolation into intimacy, and avoidance into engagement. For the avoidant, this is monumental because it means they are choosing closeness, not being forced into it. When you see these signs, it's not just that the relationship is working, it's that love has reached a depth it has never had before. It's real this time because the avoidant is no longer protecting themselves from love, they are embracing it. When an avoidant finally chooses love, it is one of the quietest yet most powerful transformations you can witness. Choosing love isn't dramatic for them. It doesn't come with grand gestures or sweeping declarations. Instead, it manifests in the subtle ways they allow themselves to be seen, the moments they stay present instead of withdrawing, and the times they share their inner world without fear of judgment. For someone who has spent a lifetime protecting themselves from emotional overwhelm, this choice is revolutionary. Choosing love means accepting vulnerability without instinctively retreating. Avoidants have been conditioned to equate closeness with danger, to see intimacy as a threat to their independence and safety. But when they finally allow love in, they are rewriting that internal narrative. They are telling themselves, and their partner, that connection is no longer something to escape from, it is something to engage with, even when it feels uncomfortable. This decision also reflects a deep trust in themselves, trust in the relationship, and trust in the possibility of stability. They are learning that closeness does not erase identity, and that emotional intimacy does not diminish autonomy. Every small step, staying during emotional moments, lowering walls, offering comfort, sharing thoughts, becomes proof that love is not a trap, but a choice they can make freely and consistently. Perhaps most importantly, when an avoidant finally chooses love, it is a testament to healing. It demonstrates that they have faced their fears, understood their patterns, and allowed themselves to experience connection on a deeper level. The relationship becomes less about survival and more about growth, trust, and mutual respect. In the end, choosing love is their quiet declaration that they are ready to be fully present, fully human, and fully capable of sustaining intimacy. It is not a fleeting surrender, but a courageous commitment, a signal that, at last, love has found a home inside a heart that once only knew walls. This is the moment when avoidance gives way to presence, and true love finally blooms.